Morning, Trainiacs. The first week of the low carb, high fat adaptation process to build up to Challenge Roth, over. Somebody on Instagram asked for an update on mood, appetite, body weight, sweaty hats. So as I warm up for this bike, I'm gonna give you just the very short Coles notes of everything that I've experienced in the first week of going low carb, high fat, the right way. First thing to know about going low carb, high fat for endurance athletes is that it's not as simple as just doing a whole bunch of fasted workouts, lowering your carbs. You have to go about it the right way. I was trying to do that over the course of end of November, December, January. As I was doing this, I was monitoring my fasting blood glucose levels, and they really didn't change. They were high. They were actually to a point of pre-diabetic levels. That's why I brought in Dr. Dan Plews, who is the person that's going to be consulting with me on this entire process. Now, if you haven't done it already and this is of interest to you, go to triathlontaren.com/theplews and get the free starter kit that Dan and I have put together. Also, two caveats to all this. Number one, this is not keto. There are aspects and times of this process that will be keto, but it's not keto all the time. That is massively risky. Second thing, this does not apply to everyone. Dan Plews himself says that in my case, this will either be the solution to or the cause of a lot of problems. So you have to go about it in a very systematic way to make sure your hormones stay in check, your performance stays in check, exercise caution. So start of this process, really not a lot changes. What we do is we go to kind of like a whole 30-ish sort of diet where we're not really monitoring carbs, we're not really monitoring anything besides hunger and what we eat. So in that download at the triathlontaren.com/theplews, there's a list of foods that I can eat. And what I'm doing is uploading that to the Senza app, basically just to track how many carbs I'm eating, get a sense of what has carbs. And because all of those foods are very natural, what I've found that's happened is my blood glucose level has started to decline, and it's actually declined when I give it more carbs. So that's kind of an indication of being a little bit pre-diabetic, having a glucocorticoid response. And this is starting to get my body used to having less refined carbs, less starchy carbs, kind of unlock that ability to tap into fat. And we know that that's happening because my fasting blood glucose levels are actually going down. That's successful. As I'm doing that, what I found is that day 2, I was extremely hungry. Looking back on day 1, the amount of calories that I ate was actually quite low, and that's what happens when all of a sudden you strip out a lot of the refined carbohydrates, anything that is very calorie dense, things that are processed. So instead of actually having to feel like I'm on a diet, I actually feel like I'm forcing myself to eat, which is nice. So I don't feel hungry just yet, except for the case when I don't monitor what I eat, because everything's so clean, I'm actually taking in less calories. So the next question that I'm sure you're asking is, all right, well, have you lost any weight? For starters, weight is not the goal here. Losing weight is not actually one of the key drivers of making this change. It might be an ancillary benefit, but in studies that show fat oxidation and going to a more low carb, high fat diet, there's not a clear correlation in weight loss, actually. It's kind of like a secondary benefit. What I found is starting this, my weight was around 154.8, today 154. So just a slight decrease in weight, but I would actually probably say that that is a because of having more roughage in my digestive system, going through my digestive system. Performance numbers. We really didn't have any workouts just yet that tested my performance at all, but one of the workouts that we did was a longer, lower intensity bike where I wasn't allowed to take any calories during. No carbs, just a little bit of electrolyte and some exogenous ketones towards the end if I felt like I needed it. Overall performance numbers, more or less the same, but that could be because we are not really reducing any carbs whatsoever. We're just making sure that I'm not hungry. That combined with following the more Whole30 diet are really the only things that we're monitoring. Not being hungry, clean foods. One of the things that I did notice, more so actually NTK noticed, is I've been a little cranky, been a little irritable, hard to live with, some might say. And I actually felt that. Like I felt that more things were bothering me, and I don't know, that could be the factor of not having as much glucose in the brain, as much sugary stuff in the brain, because sugary stuff in the brain, they get along really well, especially when you've got a lifetime of eating crappy and your entire gut microbiome is wired to feed off of sugars and communicate with the brain saying, I want sugar, we like sugar, we live off of sugar. I don't have it, let's make this man crabby until he gives it to us. Even though I didn't feel bad, I didn't really have any performance downsides, I didn't have this keto flu, apparently that's coming. I didn't notice a lot of changes. Just because of the change in diet, I was a little bit crabbier. Might be in relation to my sleep numbers. Basically since day 2 of the protocol, I think when my body started realizing that it's got to change, my sleep was starting to suffer a little bit. Instead of being able to easily get 7.5, 8 hours sleep, struggling to stay asleep for 7 hours. So this week has largely been much ado about nothing. There hasn't been a whole lot of changes. Nothing drastic has really popped up that I know about. Starting tomorrow, we'll be doing actually some fat oxidation testing in the lab. We'll do that both on the bike and the run. And then starting next week, we'll get into more specific training and a keto diet. You should all have a lot of fun watching me suffer through that. So the check-in is that all systems are good, but there are a lot of things that I need to learn about, and the more I learn about it, the more I see that caution needs to be exercised. So if you want to know what you're getting yourself into and how to start, triathlontaren.com/theplues. Check it out. And now I gotta get into this ride here.